The Netherlands is home to many cities, from medieval gems to cities that were quite literally built on the seabed over the past century. But today, I am visiting a city that is completely different from all the others. A city that was heavily damaged during the war and was then rebuilt as a completely modern city, although you can still find traces of its history here. In this video, I will take you on a long walking tour past the city's most remarkable places. Welcome to Rotterdam. I'm in the city for work for a few days, so it's the perfect opportunity to explore it a little more. And what better place to start than with the building that sparked an architectural revolution in the Netherlands, the White House. It was the country's first skyscraper and, according to many, even the first in Europe. It was built by two brothers at the end of the 19th century who were considered completely crazy at the time. People believed that a building 43 meters tall could never stand on Rotterdam's soft ground. The result was a foundation of 1,000 wooden piles, with walls almost 1.4 meters thick on the ground floor. And they were wrong. The building stood firm, and today it has become a dwarf among the city's towering skyscrapers. It stands beside the old harbor, directly opposite the iconic cube houses. They were built in the 1980s. The architect designed the complex as a forest, with each cube representing the crown of a tree supported by a concrete pillar. Because the cubes are tilted at a 45-degree angle, it's almost impossible to imagine what it's like to live inside them. Not a single wall is straight, yet each home has around 100 square meters of living space. It's a remarkable and truly unique complex, made up of 38 homes and 13 commercial units. From the old harbor, I walk towards the river Nieuwe Maas, which flows right through the heart of the city. There are several iconic bridges crossing the river, and the Willemsbrug is one of them. Because the river is directly connected to the North Sea, you still get tides here, right in the middle of the city. The striking red bridge connects the city center with Noordereiland and opened in 1981. With its 55-meter-high steel pylons, it's visible from all over the city, standing out beautifully against Rotterdam's often gray skies. As I mentioned, the bridge leads onto Noordereiland, an island that is without doubt one of the most unique parts of the city. It's quite literally a village in the middle of the river. Because the island was largely spared during the bombing of Rotterdam in the Second World War, it still has the atmosphere of pre-war Rotterdam. This is also where you can see the remains of the old railway bridge. Only the eastern section, known as De Hef, has been preserved. As you walk through the old streets, it's easy to see. The buildings here have remained low-rise, giving the neighborhood a completely different feel from the rest of the city. From the island, you're treated to an incredible view of Rotterdam's skyline in every direction. Originally, this wasn't a natural island. It was created when new harbors were dug around a narrow strip of land, cutting it off from the mainland. At the southern tip, you'll find one of the very best views of the iconic Erasmus Bridge, which I'll be visiting later in the video. The island is about 1.3 kilometers long, but only around 100 meters wide. While the western side of the island is dominated by the Skyline, the eastern side is home to two historic bridges. The Koningshavenbrug, better known as De Hef, is the old railway bridge that opened in 1927. For many years, it was a vital link on the railway line between Rotterdam and Breda. The bridge was heavily damaged during the war, but it remained standing. In 1993, the underground railway tunnel opened, making the bridge obsolete. Local residents strongly opposed plans to demolish it. To them, the bridge was part of the soul of the city, and today it is officially protected as a national monument. Right next to it is the Koningshavenbrug, which carries all other traffic and dates from the same period. Together, these two bridges survived the war and remain iconic landmarks that continue to define the city. Once I leave the island behind, I follow the river south, where another unique building comes into view, the Poortgebouw. It was built in 1879 and originally served as the headquarters of the Holland America Trading Company, before later becoming the headquarters of the Municipal Port Authority. In the 1970s, the building was left vacant and was occupied by squatters, who transformed it into a cultural center with affordable housing and artist studios. To this day, it is still managed by an independent residential community. As I mentioned earlier, Rotterdam was heavily affected during the Second World War. A memorial along the river Maas commemorates Leudes 24. It was from here that more than 12,000 Jewish men, women, and children were deported by the Nazis. Only a small number of them survived. Although Rotterdam became a city of reconstruction after the war, traces of its darkest chapter can still be found in many places, including here. A little further south, I enter the Katendrecht district. At the end of the 19th century, new docks were dug here, transforming what had once been a quiet village into a peninsula filled with sailors, dock workers, and migrants. For decades, this was also Rotterdam's red light district, and with so many Chinese sailors arriving here, it even became the first and largest Chinatown on mainland Europe. Today, though, it's a completely different place. The rough edges have disappeared, much of the industry has gone, and in its place you'll find trendy restaurants and lively cafes with outdoor terraces. From here, you also get one of the best views of Kop van Zuid, another peninsula that remained an isolated area of warehouses and railway tracks well into the 1970s. In the 1990s, the city decided to transform it into a hyper-modern urban district. Over the decades that followed, skyscrapers began to rise here, including the iconic De Rotterdam. The most striking building stands right at the tip of the peninsula, Hotel New York. Built in 1901, it was once the headquarters of the Holland-America line. From the quay outside, almost 1 million Europeans boarded great steamships bound for America between 1873 and 1973, hoping to build a new life across the Atlantic. It's quite special to stand here, especially knowing that my own ancestors emigrated to America in 1872, although they most likely didn't leave from this very spot. After a few years, they returned to the Netherlands and decided to build their lives here instead. By now, the sun is slowly sinking towards the horizon. I leave behind what is often called the Manhattan on the Maas and make my way across Rotterdam's most iconic bridge, the Erasmusbrug. Although we've already seen it from a distance, this really is the city's most beautiful connection between north and south. The bridge is an 800-meter-long cable-stayed bridge, better known as the Swan because of its elegant design and its distinctive 139-meter-high white pylon that rises above the skyline. It opened in 1996, finally giving the southern part of the city a direct connection to the north, where Rotterdam's city center had traditionally been. The bridge became a catalyst for redevelopment. Thanks to this fast and direct connection, developers and architects finally had the confidence to invest in the southern part of the city. So the Erasmusbrug doesn't just define Rotterdam's skyline, it also helped create the skyline that now surrounds it. From the bridge, you can see the city's newest and tallest building, the Zalmhaven. At the time of my visit, this 215-meter skyscraper is the tallest building in the Benelux. It surpassed the previous record holder by 50 meters, officially becoming the tallest building in the Netherlands, although the question is, for how long? Not far from the tower, at the foot of the bridge, lies Leuvehaven, one of the oldest surviving harbors in the city. Today, it has been transformed into an open-air museum, home to dozens of historic ships, tugboats, cranes, and other maritime relics. Every vessel and every machine is still fully operational and maintained by volunteers, making this a truly living museum. The harbor was created at the beginning of the 17th century to accommodate the explosive growth of Rotterdam's trade. For centuries, this was a bustling waterfront filled with sailing ships, merchants, warehouses, and sailors' inns. Before the war, it was completely surrounded by historic buildings. Sadly, today only the water remains. By now, evening has fallen and darkness is settling over the city, giving Rotterdam an entirely different character. I walk back towards my starting point through the Wijnhaven, passing the historic Regentess Bridge with its beautiful sculptures. Eventually, I arrive back at the White House, now seen from a completely different perspective. As you can see, an evening walk is highly recommended. Once night falls, Rotterdam is transformed into a spectacular display of light. The next morning, I continue my walk and explore the northern side of the river. It's still early, which means the city is quiet and the streets are almost empty. Starting from the market hall and the medieval Laurenskerk, which also partly survived the war, I will return to these two remarkable buildings later in the video. When you look back at the old photographs from after the war, it's almost a miracle that anything was still standing, especially the city's larger buildings. Walking through the streets of the city center, you mainly see new developments built after the war and during the past few decades. But one building immediately stands out again, the City Hall. It was built between 1914 and 1920 in an eclectic style, with strong influences from the Neo-Renaissance and Neoclassicism. It was meant to be a prestigious palace that reflected the wealth and ambition of the city. The heavy stone construction and its favorable position in relation to the wind also helped save the building from the flames during the destruction of the city. Through the still quiet streets, I continue my walk and pass Central Station, with its roof pointing out towards the city. Wherever you walk in Rotterdam, high-rise buildings are always visible. Many cities in the Netherlands were bombed during the war, but Rotterdam chose a completely different approach when rebuilding. It is also the only city in the country where you find so many high-rise buildings of this scale. Along the way, I passed the depot of Museum Boijmans van Beuningen. Although this was the world's first publicly accessible art storage facility, unfortunately, I don't have enough time to visit the inside. However, the exterior alone is already spectacular. The entire rounded facade of the nearly 40-meter-high building is covered in mirrors. Because of its curved shape, it reflects the entire city skyline, creating a miniature version of Rotterdam on its surface. That makes this building one of the most unique and remarkable structures in the city. Next to the museum is the Museum Park. Alongside the depot, you'll also find the Chabot Museum, the Natural History Museum, and Kunsthal Rotterdam. Just south of the park is Queen Emma Square. The square was laid out at the end of the 19th century and named after the queen of the time. Back then, this part of the Maritime district was where the city's wealthiest residents lived. The park blends almost seamlessly into the city's largest park, one of Rotterdam's most popular places. Right in the middle of this dynamic city, it forms a peaceful oasis of greenery. It was designed as early as 1852 by a renowned landscape architect in the classic English landscape style. So instead of straight paths, you'll find rolling lawns, winding footpaths, ponds, and centuries-old monumental trees. At the heart of the park stands a stately mansion that has served a variety of purposes since it was built in the 19th century. Today, it is home to a restaurant. From almost everywhere in the park, you can see the 185-meter-high Euromast rising above the trees. This impressive tower was built in 1960 for the International Horticultural Exhibition. At the time, it stood just 101 meters tall. But when another building in the city was set to surpass it, a huge steel mast was added to the top, making it the tallest structure in Rotterdam once again. Following the river, I make my way back towards the city center, where the rising sun breaks through between the skyscrapers. Not far from the park lies Leuvehaven. This charming and romantic part of the city still feels like a living 19th century painting. It was dug out in the middle of the 19th century and, as the name suggests, became the departure point for a ferry crossing to the south bank. It soon developed into the home of elite sailing in the Netherlands. Even the prince established a yacht club here in an elegant building beside the harbor. Remarkably, the building survived the war. Today, it houses the World Museum and a well-known restaurant. I continue past the places I visited in the dark yesterday, and what a difference it is seeing them again in daylight. The atmosphere is completely different, as are the views. That's exactly what makes it so worthwhile to experience the city both by day and by night. Around lunchtime, I visit two remarkable landmarks in the heart of the city that I briefly passed earlier this morning. I begin at the Laurenskerk, which is now open to visitors. One of the best things about the Laurenskerk is that for a small fee, you can climb to the top of the tower. From the very start of the climb, you get a completely different perspective of the church, looking down over the entrance hall from above. As you make your way up the steep staircase, you pass several intermediate levels where you can catch your breath. Here, you'll find the enormous clock mechanism, and higher up, the centuries-old bells are clearly visible inside the top of the tower. Once you reach the top, you're rewarded with an incredible view across a city filled with towering buildings. The contrast is striking. You're standing on top of a medieval giant, a structure that was extraordinary for its time, yet today it is surrounded by some of the tallest modern skyscrapers in the country. Even at a height of 64 meters, you still feel small among Rotterdam's skyline. But the climb is more than worth it, and I can highly recommend it. Once I'm back on the ground, I head inside the church. This Gothic church is the only medieval building still standing in the city. It was built between 1449 and 1525 and still reflects the history of the very first Rotterdam. During the war, however, the church was almost completely destroyed by fire, although the tower remained standing. Here, too, there were plans to demolish the building, but the people of Rotterdam fought to preserve it. During the restoration, the decision was made to install clear glass in the tall, pointed windows, making the interior much brighter. The vaulted wooden ceiling was also painstakingly rebuilt after the war using traditional medieval techniques. Although much of the interior is therefore relatively modern, the church is home to the largest marble pipe organ in the Netherlands and the second largest mechanical organ in the world. It was built in 1973, and with its gold detailing, towering steel pipes and white marble gallery, it completely dominates the rear of the church. Besides this magnificent organ, you'll also find 3 smaller organs and several elaborate tombs of 17th century Dutch naval heroes. Back outside, I make my way to one of Rotterdam's most famous and most visited landmarks, the Market Hall. This horseshoe-shaped building, standing 40 meters high, opened in 2014. Inside, you'll find a vibrant indoor food market beneath what is considered the world's largest artwork. It's an explosion of color, and it's easy to forget that more than 200 apartments are built into the enormous arch above. Imagine having that as the view from your living room every day. Later that afternoon, I take one final walk through the city and return to Katendrecht, this time to explore its western side. My first stop is the Phoenix, a huge harbor warehouse dating back to 1923. The most striking feature is the Tornado, a spectacular staircase that twists through the building like a storm before ending at a panoramic viewing platform. You'll also find thousands of suitcases displayed throughout the building, creating a remarkable maze to wander through. Most of these old suitcases tell the story of a city that welcomed and farewelled travelers from all over the world for centuries, while also reflecting the darker chapters of the war and the years of reconstruction. I continue through the district to its westernmost point, where you'll find the Zes Rotterdam, the former flagship of the Holland-America line. From 1959 onwards, this ship carried tens of thousands of passengers across the Atlantic to New York. Today, it remains here as a monument to the past, celebrating the city's rich maritime history and the spirit of adventure that Rotterdam still embodies. As you walk through Rotterdam, you quickly realize this is no ordinary historic city. When it lost its heart on the 14th of May 1940, it faced two choices: mourn what had been lost or build towards what it could become. It chose the latter. Looking firmly to the future, the city rose from its own ashes, both literally and figuratively. Stone by stone, Rotterdam reached for the sky, becoming a playground for pioneers, innovators, and visionaries. Yet thankfully, its old soul can still be found in the pre-war buildings that stand in breathtaking contrast to the giants of the present day. It is a city that never stands still, where new ideas continue to take shape. Whether it's a wave pool for surfing, an even taller tower, or another iconic bridge, Rotterdam continues to embrace bold ambitions time and time again. It's a city that is well worth visiting if you're ever in the region. For me, it's certainly a place I always enjoy returning to, especially because it's so different from anywhere else in the Netherlands. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you'd like to join me on my future adventures. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.